Hello, good day everyone. It gives me great joy again to see you in this video today. Today I'll be addressing a particular issue, migration and development. I want to look at the issue of migration and how this has become very topical across the world because of the multi-dimensional elements of migration and the interface with development. Especially now with the aggravation of movement of people across spaces, across time. It's not that it's new for migration is not a new phenomenon, but it's just that it's accentuating because of the current realities as it affects social demographics across the world, labor across the world, and industrialization across the world, and the changes in terms of consciousness around migration and the role migration and migrants can play across the world. So, but interestingly, why this video is very important is because usually people don't discuss migration in context of development. People look at migration from the angle on only the legality of migration, because you can have legal migration, which we call regular migration. You may have irregular migration, which we call illegal migration. So the migration simply means movement of people across definite boundaries over a period of time. So two key elements of migration is movement of people. At the same time, there must be movement across definite boundaries. In our case today, in this video, we look at definite international boundaries. And over a period of time, in migration, there must be time consideration. Maybe people want to go there for 6 months, 1 year, or forever, permanent migration. Because you can also have permanent migration and temporary migration. Permanent migration does not start in terms of permanence. Sometimes it starts as temporary, then even though the migrant may have in mind that it will stay permanently, but at least there's this consideration that, okay, you may then be there and start to stay permanently. So it's a complicated scenario. It's a multi-layer scenario. So that's migration in terms of definition, movement of people across definite geographical boundaries over a period of time, definite time. Development is more complicated to define. In fact, there's no generally acceptable definition for migration, for development. You may only describe migration. So development simply, you can say, is capacity of people, consciousness of people, realization of people, and their capacity to meet their needs and to believe that in the system they have, if they self-define as a developed system. But there are some elements that we usually consider to be very paramount and very important in considering development. It means people must be conscious of the fact that their country is a developed country, and people must believe that that system gives them the capacity to be their best. That's very important. A developed system must give the people the capacity, the consciousness, and the realization that in this system I can be my best. Is the capacity of the system to enable everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of any consideration, to be able to achieve their life goals. Capacity enablement. Then we also have some elements: absence of minimal level of inequality, minimal level of absence of poverty, minimal level of absence of unemployment, minimal level or absence of corruption, minimal level or absence of insecurity, then high level of educated population. So these are basic elements that we believe must be there. And also the institutions must be competent. So development is the capacity of the individual within a definite system to achieve life aspirations and life goals with fundamental elements that individuals consider paramount to achieving their life goals. So you can only describe development, you cannot define. And it's very important to know that development is a process, it's not a destination, it's not an event. That's why we usually say that all countries in the long run, in the final analysis, are developing countries. So we only use the word develop for analytical purpose. So first world nation, second world nation, third world nation, they are for analytical purposes. In development cycle, we believe that all countries are in the final analysis developing, because development is not an event, it's not a destination, it's a process. So now, looking at why is it now important to look at development and migration and development? Is because you won't find many migration policies or experts or government officials describing migration in context of development. But we believe this is very important, especially now that migration is becoming very popular. People are migrating. So when you want to look at migration and development, you look at it at different levels, at 3 different levels. Development at the level of countries of destination, where migrants are moving to. Development at the level of countries of origin, where migrants are moving from. And development at the level of migrants themselves. Migrants are very important when you are describing migration. So it's at these 3 levels you look at it. And you look at it you can also look at migration and development in terms of pessimistic perspective, in terms of we call them pessimistic perspective, and that they don't believe, essentially, in the sense that migration can lead to development, or there can be any element. Then they also have the optimistic perspective in terms of we call them celebratory perspective. People who have positive mindset and who believe that migration is very important, that is a win-win in the long run. So I don't want to sound academic. I don't want to say I'm celebratory or I'm pessimistic. My own is just to look at this issue in the sense that migration is very, very important. And it's a reality nobody can stop anyway. People migrate. And even now, there's an ascendancy of migration, especially from poor countries. Though we still believe that the highest level of migration, the most predominant level of migration is migration from south to south. South-south migration, poor countries to poor countries, because it's easier, and it's not long distance. In terms of finance, in terms of distance, it's easier to move south-south. But now, very importantly also today, is we have ascendancy of movement from south to north, that is from poor countries to rich countries. And that's actually the ones that have been so predominant, that is so predominantly engaged in the literature. South-north migration, poor countries to rich countries, migrants moving from poor countries to rich countries in terms of to better their life. So why will people move? People move essentially because they believe people can move in terms of forced migration, where people believe that, okay, there is insecurity, there is violence, there is war, there is persecution. But there's also people who move voluntarily, and that's is more common than involuntary migration or willful migration. So, but looking at migration now, migrants need to watch this video to understand their role. Developed countries need to look at it, and poor countries need to look at it, because I believe migration, the relation between migration and development. I've done a lot of research. A lot of research is on migration, actually. And I'm also a development sociologist, a development expert. So that's why I believe bringing my experience in migration studies, and being a migrant myself at some point, even now, I still move around a lot. I move around a lot on the account of my work as a scholar, as an academic, as a lecturer, and as a consultant. So I move around a lot. So I believe, based on my experience and researches in migration studies, and being a development expert, I can bring these two together to have this conversation with you, depending on who you are. So I believe when you look at destination countries and countries of origin and the migrant themselves, there are opportunities that one can look at and begin to see that. Especially now that I did a video on why reasons or why poor countries remain poor and underdeveloped. And migration can help poor countries and can also help rich countries in terms of their development trajectories and development processes and outcomes. So if you look at it, migration has huge implications for development. And we have to begin to look at it like this, not only to look at migration in some other ways, but in terms of how it can jumpstart development and assist development. And we have to realize this so that we can better strategize to be able to annex all the positives of migration and minimize the negatives of migration. Definitely, in terms of development, migration of competent or competent labor or skilled labor can be at huge cost. Migration of competent laborers or labor can be a major loss to poor countries, because when you have, and this skilled labor is needed as a bunch, is needed to drive growth and development of poor countries in the long run. So when you have exodus of these competent, well-educated, well-experienced, agile and competent and healthy population migrating in large scale, it can be of negative consequence for poor countries in the long run in terms of development. Because migration is very selective. Destination countries will not necessarily issue visa to people who have nothing to bring in terms of skills and population, in terms of productive population to their system. So migration is selective. It's on the account of age, experience, knowledge, education, and well-being. So it's not just all comers, especially when you talk about legal migration. And now illegal migration is being discouraged because even now recently I was hearing from the European Union that they want to make it very easy now to evacuate and deport failed asylum seekers or illegal migrants, so that they only want to allow legal migration and or migration of skilled labor. If you look at Canada, Australia, United States of America, United Kingdom, European Union, and all of these developed spaces, they have one policy or the other to attract competent workers into their system. So definitely not some negative that is commonly said. Migration of skilled labor from poor countries to rich countries can be of negative consequence for these countries in the long run. At the same time, if you look at also developed countries, also usually countries of destination, people talk about migration being burden to some of these rich countries in terms of maybe overpopulation, congestion, also the issue of integration, the issue of diversity, and to the extent that migration is not a major issue in terms of campaigns and change of government in those places. People also believe that their identity, their original identity of those destination countries, the identity is being eroded on the account of too many migrants. So there's this also the issue of insecurity, because many of migrants also are seen to be they are profiled in a way that they think to be considered, many of them to be threats to their security. And also many migrants also have migrated erroneously, unrealistic expectations. So many of them then get there and be trapped. Some of them migrated temporarily only for them to stay back there without the necessary documentation that are important to their well-being and being able to achieve their life goals over there. So these are usually concerns that countries have expressed over time in terms of migration. But yet, we still believe in migration and development cycle, that there are many benefits that countries can reap. Let's start from the poor countries where people believe skilled laborers or skilled labor is being taken away from these countries. That is not a problem for us. We believe that migration is also circular and migration is self-regenerating. When migrants move, they go work overseas. They do send remittances back home, and these remittances now can be regarded in some countries as huge return on migration. Some of these countries, poor countries, have remittances now surpassing their gross domestic product, to the extent that remittances are now being used to cushion the poverty effect in those poor countries. And when these remittances come, so many times they are used to finance education, they are used to finance investment, they are used to build capacity. So it's not only about consumption, though another negative of a major negative of remittances is the fact that it builds culture of dependency. People normally should work and contribute meaningfully to the economic process or the productive process, then they begin to be dependent on remittances, waiting for the next time remittances will arrive. But that's just by the way. I have also done research whereby remittances can be sources of conflict in families, within kinship system, where people see remittances are being taken over by some people, and it can cause a lot of conflict. But beyond these two negative elements, remittances are also invested in household investment, and also the remittances also used to pay school fees, to train people, to pay for apprenticeship, and to start small, small and medium scale enterprises. And this will in the long run build returns on investment. Also, remittances can also be used for health care of household people. And also remittances stabilize household economy. So and also a lot of countries depend on remittances from migrants to maintain stability, and even forex, to maintain their forex exchange. And so this is also a benefit. And also, if it's just for poor countries to be determined and be strategic, China did this, even India, to the extent that their nationals moved abroad at some point, and they're still moving, and sent remittances home to take care of their people and to build investment back home, to build resources back home, to be able to jumpstart their economy. There is nearly a national policy, or there are national policies, intentionally or non-intentionally, around migration in some countries, where they encourage their people to move out, learn skills, learn technological capabilities, and send money back home, and build this knowledge and ideas back home. So if a country is losing productive population abroad, it's just for that country to then be strategic and annex the opportunities for migrants abroad, and also continue to build. When some people leave, some at home should be developed, should be empowered, should be educated to be able to take over the vacuum left by those ones. So it's not just all negative. It's for countries, and this is the point I'm making strongly. It's for countries to realize that opportunities in migration can be annexed to drive their development, and move policies, institute policies, and energize policies in a direction that you can harvest the opportunities for migration and minimize the negative. So when people leave, it creates employment for others at home to fill. And if they leave also, some new opportunities are open for those at home. And this is very important in the sense that, and even abroad at destination, those abroad, the destination countries definitely are benefiting from workers. And some of these workers are recruited at cheaper rates than nationals of those countries. So they are benefiting from the labor, if you like, cheap labor of migrants, who don't immediately claim the same rights as those abroad. I'm not saying there should be a system to exploit migrants. No, that's not my point. So my point is just that it's very important for us to begin to look more carefully and critically, so that we can take advantage of migration effectively. For that, you have the remittances, and the migrants also send ideas back home, and they establish businesses back home. I've done researches on migration and development in poor countries. I've done such researches before. They invest, and part of my findings is that they invest. They are happier, their families are happier, families are encouraged. Families of migrants don't commit suicide meaningfully once they receive remittances. And the household quality of life is improved. And from the experience we have in China and India and a number of other countries, though there are stiffer border controls abroad, skilled laborers are still welcomed overseas. And as the aging population begins to accentuate in developed countries, they need younger populations to work. And most of these younger populations, ambitious populations, well-equipped populations, are available in poor countries, and they are simply attracted abroad for the benefit of developed countries. And this contributes enormously. We have cases even in the UK, even in the US, even in Canada, Australia, even in the EU. We have data available to show that migrants contribute enormously, humongous amount of money to the economy, even in taxation. Even in taxation, we know that it's on research. We have data available on the fact that migrants tend to be hard workers, whether regular or irregular ones. They tend to be hard workers to earn more. And once they earn more, they pay more in taxes, even more than residents, even more than nationals of those countries. So they contribute in terms of work time, productivity, and even in tax. So developed countries cannot just turn around and say migrants don't come. They contribute enormously. And we have data available for all of this. So the burden, the pressure they put on the system, the pressure they put on the border, the pressure they put on the identity, on the culture, can also be compensated for by the taxes and productivity they contribute to those countries. So it's win-win at the level of developed countries. And even at the level of poor countries, it's win-win. So people should stop this idea of saying, okay, the skilled laborers are taking, the skilled labor, the people that can contribute to development in the long run because of their age and productivity and education are being taken to developed countries. Fine. But these migrants also remit ideas, remit money, remit energy. I did a research on financial and non-financial or extra-financial remittances that workers send them. I've done researches on remittances, migration, and development. Quite a number of them. So when you look at the sending country and receiving countries in terms of migration or migrants, people have development opportunities to take from this. And for migrants themselves, if they migrate legitimately, for example, or legally or regularly, then they are able to take advantage of that system to achieve their goals. Many get totally new level of education, type of education, totally new skill, totally new employment, build totally new family, take advantage of all the infrastructure there to achieve their life goals. And in the long run, they feel they are better for it. And if they feel they are better for it, they are indeed better for it compared to being left back. And many of them come back to their countries of origin to give back in terms of community social responsibility, in terms of support system for the government, in terms of idea and expertise. And many of them eventually return at a later life to build system, to build infrastructure, and also to establish companies. So it's not, we should begin to change our perspective in terms of looking at migration of skilled labor as a totally negative development implication. No, it's just for countries to manage the fallout of migration and take advantage of migration positively within the context of development, to drive that development, whether at destination or origin, or even at level of migrants themselves. So for migrants, it's good for migrants to realize there's a long distance race. It's a long haul when you migrate. You may need to learn totally new skill. You may need time to a waiting time before you may have to do some jobs that may be totally at variance with your capacity from home. But that's not a problem. Stay the course, learn new skills, build new networks, get new experience, fresh experiences that are needed at destination, and work it. And in the long run, you'll be better for it. But make sure you maintain your network back home and make sure you continue to improve yourself there. So at the level of migrants, countries of origin and destination, migration can help and assist development. But everybody must be intentional. You must be able to diagnose the system and look at the positives and negatives and strategically place yourself. I am not against migration in any way. I'm incurably optimistic that migration can drive development positively in the long run, in a sustainable manner. Migration is one of the one of the major keys to achieving sustainable development goal and achieving sustainable development. Development in the short run and in the long run. So I'm optimistic that development should be more open to migration, that the world should be more open to migration. We should enable free border, that we enable people be positively assessed and examined and allowed to move across boundaries to benefit migrants, countries of origin and destination in development terms. Subscribe to this channel, share this video, drop your comments and like. Until I see you in the next video, continue to work towards development. And migration is a major key. Thank you.